Right. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Downtown San Diego Partnership and the San Diego Small Business Alliance for this discussion on outdoor dining. Our organizations felt it was important to host this follow-up discussion together because we wanted to be sure that all restaurants in the city of San Diego, not just those in downtown, could have access to the insights shared today. So for those of you joining us from around the city, welcome. We're really glad you could make it today. I'm Betsy Brennan, President and CEO of the Downtown Partnership and the moderator for today's discussion. A couple housekeeping notes on the format of today's webinar. We have received many questions in advance and we'll try to address as many of them as possible if time allows. Also, if questions arise during the webinar, please submit them through the Zoom question and answer function. You will see that on your Zoom controls. Let's get started. We know small businesses from throughout the city are facing an uphill battle as you navigate the rapid pace of change created by COVID-19. The San Diego Small Business Alliance and the Downtown Partnership are here to support the economic vitality of our communities, to provide resources and opportunities like this webinar, and to advocate on your behalf for changes like those made to allow for outdoor dining services. Today's expert speakers from the city of San Diego will go over what businesses can do to expand their outdoor service following the mayor's recent executive order. They will go over what the order means, the next steps available to you in your neighborhood, and how to navigate the process of creating your own outdoor dining experience. We have been very fortunate to have their dedicated collaboration to make this program happen. First up is Lowe. She's Director of Development Services Department. Elyse, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. And I really just understand and want to empathize with everyone in the restaurant industry with all of your ups and downs. And I want to assure you that myself, my team, and this administration of the city of San Diego takes it very seriously. And we're excited to bring forward opportunities for you to be able to operate your business outdoors in San Diego's sunny weather. So I'm going to go through a PowerPoint with you to walk you through what the temporary outdoor business operations are and the mayor's recent executive order and how to apply and what we will approve and what we won't approve, and then we'll have plenty of time for question and answer. I want to thank the members of my team at Development Services who are actually on this webinar too, who are experts. The people who will be reviewing your permits are here so that they can hear your questions and concerns and already be aware of those when they are reviewing your application and your sketch. So I want to thank them for taking the time to join today. And then obviously Natasha, Collura, who is an amazing director of special events for the city, who has been leading the way for the street closures, which are not processed by Development Services. So go ahead and bring up my presentation and share my screen. Here we are. Okay. If I could get confirmation from, well, I can't see anybody that you can see my screen. Betsy, can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. I want to make sure that you all know that the city of San Diego early on set up, well, I say early on because it feels like an eon ago, it was only in May, we set up a temporary outdoor business operations website when we knew that we needed to work on streamlining our permit process for allowing outdoor business operations for restaurants and retail in streets, sidewalks, parking lane, and in private property. Please make sure that you go to this website and that you bookmark it. This is where we are posting all of the information. If you're not already in our system as someone who has submitted a proposal, that's fine, but go here and it will have everything that you need to know in order to prepare your application to the city, which we have streamlined to the best of our ability. On July 7th, Mayor Kevin Faulkner signed an executive order which allowed for limiting enforcement for sidewalk cafes and for private property to be utilized for restaurant use. This is in anticipation of the July 14th interim urgency ordinance that is docketed to go before the San Diego City Council, and I'll be going over what's included in both of those. The mayor's executive order specifically allowed for sidewalk cafe use of the full sidewalk for any restaurant that can use a sidewalk and keep a 4-foot clear ADA pathway. That's American with Disabilities Act protected pathway for travel without a permit. And that is for the 7 days up until the interim urgency ordinance is expected to be passed. Why did he do that? Because on the same day, California Governor Newsom directed restaurants to close indoor dining, and we wanted to create immediate opportunity. We created that immediate opportunity for the sidewalks as well as in the private parking lots. I know many of you are very anxious and perhaps even angry that you were not immediately extended in that executive order on Tuesday the opportunity to use the parking spaces in front of your business. And the reason behind that is because it is very important that we make sure that when you are putting patrons into the parking lane, which is in essence into the path, very close to the path of travel of moving vehicles, we have to do a safety review of the type of barriers that you're putting forward in order to do that. So removing street parking for what we call pedestrian plazas is in fact in the proposed interim urgency ordinance. And in addition to sidewalk cafes, we have streamlined those processes. We've also already been processing street closures. Little Italy, La Jolla has applied, North Park has applied, downtown, looking at closing full street closures. That is again processed by special events, but the fees in the interim urgency ordinance, the fees for those street closures will be waived. We're also going to allow more temporary signage, and I'll get into detail on that. We have a very restrictive sign ordinance, but we know that you need to get the word out about what's going on with your business. And then lastly, our ordinance going forward includes a wholesale to consumer portion that addresses what happens when wholesale can't get their goods out to the restaurant or other industry, and we're going to enable them to sell it to consumers in private parking lots. So I'm going to go over the process to apply, additional outside agencies requirements, and then take your questions. So again, here is the Mayor Kevin Faulkner executive order that specifically limiting enforcement of the parking regulations to allow for eating and drinking establishments to use private parking lots for outdoor eating and drinking, and then limiting the municipal code requiring public right-of-way permits for sidewalk cafes. In the interim urgency ordinance, we will be waiving the requirement for those public right-of-way permits in order to streamline the process. So many of you are very familiar with what sidewalk cafes look like, and this is just an overview for you for those who don't know and who need more information. The sidewalk cafes that are allowed now by the executive order, we are encouraging the temporary placement of furniture at a store frontage, and they normally in a process at development services require a public right-of-way permit, an EMRA, and an inspection, or they could be permitted by a business improvement district public right-of-way enhancement program. What we'll be doing on the 14th is allowing you to submit an application, which is a very streamlined application. It's all online. You'll be submitting a layout plan and an encroachment maintenance removal agreement. We need to be able to see what your layout is and ensure that that path of travel is there. You may extend your sidewalk cafe to the area in front of your business, as well as in adjacent business frontage with their written permission. So it is in essence supposed to be in front of your business, but if your neighboring business provides you with permission, then you may do so. Always you need to make sure that the tables ensure the social distancing of 6 feet, that we have the circulation and compliance with ADA. And it's really important also to think about where access for utilities, building entrances, crosswalks, bus stops, those things have to be taken into account. The Sidewalk Cafe program for enhancement of the public right-of-way, the business improvement districts that have these active programs include the El Cajon Business Improvement Association, Mission Hills, Adams Avenue, Pacific Beach, City Heights, Ocean Beach, Little Italy, Hillcrest, North Park, and Gaslamp. The bids that are allowed to have the program by its 2011 council ordinance that may or may not have had it, or they currently have an inactive program, is downtown, La Jolla, San Ysidro, and East Village. And from what I understand, they may activate at any time. And the sidewalk cafes, the bids that don't have the program, not active, Old Town College area and the Diamond District, I believe was not included in the initial authorization. So businesses in these neighborhoods need to get a permit from Development Services for a sidewalk cafe. Now, let's get to what everybody's super excited about, the utilizing the public right-of-way street parking lane and the pedestrian plazas. Again, the key requirements, you need to submit an application, a digital application that will include your layout plan, and we've got a sketch for you to make it easier, and an encroachment maintenance removal agreement for your temporary outdoor business. Again, we want to tell you that the layout could be limited to the area in front of your business and to an adjacent business as long as you have written permission from them. We're always going to need social distancing, ADA, etc. But now, once you're adjacent to the travel lane in the parking lane, you must provide protective barriers. So you can see in this photo where they have steel protective barriers that are keeping the cars from hitting this patron who's looking at his phone. But you also see the red velvet ropes that are delineators between businesses. So a group of businesses can come together and have the same fencing and be delineated by these simple red ropes. These types of non-protective delineators are going to be required by the County of San Diego so that they know whose tables belong to which restaurant, because that is important for maintaining your cleaning and your sanitation protocol, as well as be required by the California Alcoholic Beverage Control for the permit that you are allowed to get from them, the catering authorization that they will approve for you to extend your business footprint. They have to be delineated. Again, back to the temporary usage, we're going to be able to accept lots of different types of barriers. Some of you are going to be very concerned about aesthetics. Some of you are like, just get me the dang barrier so I can have some tables outside. So in this example, these are K-rails that are empty when they are delivered, and then you put them out and they fill them with water. The important thing to know is that this temporary outdoor business is just that. We are not expecting any sort of a railing that is going to penetrate the ground, that has to be drilled in. We're allowing these heavier things, adhesive or placed on top of the ground. It's really important that you don't drill into the ground because there's lots of things underground. And unless we've done a review of what's under the ground, there could be a conflict or a problem, and then you could have a major problem on your hands. But it's really important that everyone knows that the barriers that are in the street, that they don't block storm drain gutters, and that you don't have them in fire lanes. And if you are to take out a handicap parking space, it has to be replaced somewhere else. And all of the barriers have to have reflectors on them because they're going to be up all day and all night. So it's very, very important that they have that visibility in order to protect you and your patrons. This is an example drawing that my friend Howard Blackson, who's a prominent San Diego urban designer, created to help understand the spacing aspects of utilizing the travel lane. So in this drawing, you can see the store frontage has a 5-foot ADA access, 3 feet of parking meters to curb, which can be utilized for your program. He's drawn in here 3 feet of distance for stormwater, which we will not be requiring a 3-foot distance there, but I'm glad that he outlined it because stormwater is something to think about, water running across the curb. But you can see here that with social distancing, this assumes that you might only be able to get 4 of these tables out there, depending on the size of the table. But I wanted to make sure that folks were able to sort of envision what you could put and the number of parking spaces. And as you can see in this, they're utilizing 1, 2, 3 parking spaces for 4 tables. So our application is going to have a standard drawing that looks like this, not as cool as Howard's, definitely very governmental, but what we would like you to do is this is an example of where you will crosshatch in your business area, and then you need to demarc where your 4-foot path of travel is and how wide your sidewalk is. And then we want you to denote where your pedestrian plaza area will be, how many parking spaces you're going to take. It's very, very important that you know that you cannot block the corners. Those are called visibility triangles, and that is for your safety and for everyone's safety, that we don't block the corners so that people don't try to turn into an area and automatically get bumped into something that they couldn't see as they were coming around the corner. So we have put forward this this sketch that will be part of the application so that you can get a better idea of what we're looking for and what we need from you. So far, we've gotten from some of the proposals, people have taken a Google map and a crayon, and while we appreciate that, we need a little bit more from you and a little bit more detail in order to make sure that it's going to be safe. And this is what we hope the end result will be. We want to see your correctly spaced out patio dining with fencing, whether it be attractive or K-rails. It doesn't matter to us as long as we have those temporary barriers. This is another example that I thought I would show of another city. Well, in our interim urgency ordinance, we will be allowing for this. This concept is keeping all, now of course this picture was taken before, I guess, social distancing, but keeping the dining on the sidewalk and then relegating the passersby to the parking lane. So they've used concrete K-rails and basically said, this is where we want the pedestrians to walk. We're gonna take over the entire sidewalk for the dining purpose. That is another option that you can utilize and is included in the ordinance. So as far as the application process, you will need to provide the template drawing of the area that you plan to encroach, the barriers, the ADA pathway, the furniture locations, the encroachment agreement. And in that encroachment agreement, you need to attest to the city that you have a $1 million insurance liability policy and that you will name the city as insured in that. That is a standard agreement utilized by the city that has been in place. The business improvement districts through the enhanced PROW program have that as a requirement as well, and that's been around since 2011. And here's our sample application. You will get this ideally on Friday, your temporary outdoor business permit. You're probably asking yourself right now, why did I fill out a proposal if now they're gonna make me fill out an application? Well, again, I wanted to see the proposals in order to help inform the ordinance that we were writing. And we were able to have quite a bit of back and forth with about 40 applicants. And then at the last minute, 150 proposals came in, and we're gonna need to convert those to applications. But we will be following up with each of you to try to make it easy on you. Again, here's a close-up of our sample area. And then the template. So you'll get a blank template, and then we'll want you to fill it in like this. So here's what the blank template with the legend is going to look like, and you need to customize that for your location. Now, I'm going to move on to private parking lots. These will not require a permit. Through the executive order and through the interim urgency ordinance, we're essentially removing the parking requirement and making it by right for restaurants and retail to be able to utilize the private parking lot. The photo that I'm showing you here shows a picture of a tent. Many folks in the restaurant industry know that in order to use an outdoor area and to tent it, if it is over 400 square feet, it does require a permit from the San Diego Fire Department. The same thing with if you have a private parking lot and you are fencing it, that too requires a fire permit. The fire department will be waiving their minimal fees for that review, but private parking lots are now and ideally starting again on the 14th for the duration being able to be utilized for your outdoor restaurant activities, as long as you continue to follow social distancing, ADA, and all of the local and state regulations, and in consideration to having access to utilities and building entrances, etc. Now, a full street or travel lane closure, I was actually going to ask Natasha Collura to review this part. So if Natasha can be unmuted, that would be great.
Yeah, so Elyse, do you want to let Natasha do her presentation and then go to Q&A, or? Do
you have a separate presentation, Natasha?
I do not.
Okay.
Yes, she's just going to use my slide, so we're collaborating.
Okay, and one question before Natasha starts. Did you say this application is going to be available this Friday or after the 14th?
We're trying to get everything out this Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, everything has been, I wish I would have had it out this week, but everything's been in development, and we've continued to streamline the process, which was the goal. So we will provide instruction to everyone by Friday at 5.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Natasha Collura, Director of Special Events. Before I get started, I want to echo Elise's comments at the beginning, but also I want to acknowledge Elyse and her team for doing an awesome job and so quickly. A lot of moving parts, a lot of things that are going on, but as Elyse said, there is a strong desire and urgency on city staff end and the mayor's office to get this moving as quickly as possible. So we were fortunate that we had an existing street closure process through the special events process, and we were able to utilize that very quickly to get some of the folks like Little Italy and Gas Lamp Quarter up and running within a couple weeks. So that's been something that has been, again, an opportunity to utilize an existing process. Elyse mentioned that there will be a waiver of all of our fees. We do have late fees. Again, the ordinance will waive that. And also for the folks that have already started going, we're hoping that we can get those retroactive as well. So that's something that, again, anything we can do to try to help the businesses, we are definitely looking at. We did establish some guidelines on top of the special events planning guide. So when you go back to that website that Elyse shared, there are a couple links on there under the street closure section. There is a link to our special events planning guide, which we encourage everybody who's looking at a full street closure, take a look at. In addition to that, we established some guidelines on top of the special event planning guide as a result of COVID-19 and some of the restrictions as a result of the county and the state health orders. So we are actually updating that. We should have some new guidelines, some minor modifications up tomorrow. So just check that as you're getting ready to submit applications. Take a look at those guidelines and contact our office. I also would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Cindy Kadama, who is on our team, who many of you know, who is our operational guru, and she is working around the clock. I'm getting emails from her at all hours, trying to move this as quickly as possible. We are giving about 10 business days to our process, and a critical part of that is we have a lot of state and federal regulations we still have to adhere to, and most importantly, public safety that we are working through as well. We also made some changes. Again, many of you know that ABC did have a temporary catering license to allow people to serve alcohol and expand outside their existing business license. So we actually have modified the alcohol management plan in our special events guide, and that's an additional a modification that we made so that we could support this expanding dining and change some of the regulations within our special events permitting process. So we have made that change, and that information will be part of this permit process. And I believe that is really it. I think I want to touch on the fact that street closures, again, there are various ways that we can do that. If we can go back to the previous slide, actually, Elyse.
Oh, yes.
So, you know, when a street is closed, you know, again, we will review on a case-by-case basis. It will depend on public safety if the street can be a 24-hour closure or if it's set up and take down each night. There are a lot of issues related to that. I believe there was a question made of traffic control. And I think a question was, well, who, you know, does the city have organizations that they utilize? And we did check with our police department before this call, and we'll send this over to Downtown Partnership. There is in the Muni Code information on traffic control. PD is looking at certifying a private company that folks can utilize. So they're in that process. I don't have a timeline for that. We will update our guidelines when that is available, but that's something that we can share the existing Muni Code guidelines to answer traffic control questions. As far as the street closure goes, again, if there's setup and takedown, you know, there are towing costs, and there's a process that we can work with you to share best practices on. If there is a 24-hour closure, if that is permitted after a public safety review, then there would have to be security, and that security currently is only permitted to let in emergency vehicles.
Can you explain why they have to have security, Natasha?
Yeah, so it's critical that fire trucks and police vehicles can make it through. So we need somebody there who can remove the barricade immediately when there is an emergency. You can't have fire trucks or police officers trying to figure out how to get around a barricade.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I think equipment storage is not permitted in on the street if the street is open. So that's something that I think was a question that came up. So if you can move on to the next slide. And I believe this was just an example that, and we actually have some great photos, I think, from Gaslamp in Little Italy that we'll have to update this presentation with because they really did a great job with their program, and we were out there. And also want to acknowledge the work of PD as well, because they were working with us every step of the way and helping provide all the potential applicants with best practices. So they've been doing a great job as well. So I think that's it for me.
Great, thanks, Natasha. Just got a couple more slides for everyone. Again, covering that the interim urgency ordinance will temporarily amend the regulations and allow for the installation of temporary banners and A-frame signs within the public right-of-way, and the permit requirements and fees associated with sign permits would also be waived, so you can have A-frame signs. There are size limitations. The most important thing to remember is that you cannot block the ADA pathway, and you really need to make sure that you're keeping in mind that pedestrians will still have access to utilities, entrances, crosswalks, and bus stops. So that's exciting because that'll really help be able to get the word out about what's going on with your business, if you're carry out or if you have other things that you want to promote. Additional outside agency requirements. This is all on the temporary outdoor business website, but I wanted to make sure that you know that the State Department Alcoholic Beverage Control, through their 4th revision, relaxed their regulations. They will, in fact, approve of your business expansion if your reopening is in a manner that's consistent with the local and state health directives. They are requiring a supplemental diagram and for you to fill out a temporary catering authorization form. Again, development services is not going to require these. I'm putting this forward for your information, and this is for you to work with state alcoholic beverage control. I've included contact information about special events and filming, economic development, which folks who are in the business improvement districts might already know, Sean Caravan and Elizabeth Studebaker. And then with development services, I should have included our email address, though many of you who've already submitted can get that, but it's our contact information is all going to be put on that website. I'm trying to formalize it into one place. And that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Elyse and Natasha. We're going to try to get through as many of these questions as possible. If you have questions, please try to put them on the Q&A chat function, not on the chat. So on the Q&A function. We had quite a few questions in advance too, so I'm going to try to get through these, and I will direct them to either of you to answer, depending on which department. We did have you did have quite a bit, you both talked about it, about the street closures and the need for traffic control. We had a question from Sean. For a partial street closure, i.e. keeping a vehicle lane open at all times, can the traffic control be left in place overnight? Costs associated with setting up and breaking down traffic control has made many locations infeasible.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually going to have Cindy, because she's in the process of looking at that right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Cindy Kadam on our team.
Hi there.
Hi, Cindy. How are you?
Good, good. So just want to let you know that the street closure was initially not allowed, but we are currently reviewing that request, and I believe that we are going to be amending our guidelines that may be able to allow that equipment to be in place. So Sean, stand by. We are we hope to have that information by tomorrow, and we do understand there are costs associated with taking, setting up and dismantling every day. But the only thing is we may require security in place again for that, but at least the equipment will be allowed to remain on site for the following day. So yeah, we should have this resolved by tomorrow.
Oh, great. Thanks so much, Cindy. Really appreciate it. And I really appreciate all of you. I know this is a lot on everything that you're already doing, including in development services, doing electronic permitting, which has been about 20 years in the making. So want to commend Elyse and everybody in development services, everybody in special events, and in economic development for everything you're doing, while also trying to stand up this really important new program of outdoor dining. Okay, Kim asks, I am all for outdoor dining, but I do have a concern. Do we have a limit on how many people can be at one location? What are the risks if there are 100 patrons at an outdoor dining due to too many restaurants having outdoor tables next to each other?
So, oh, Elyse, do you want to answer that, or because it's a capacity issue that
Yeah, go ahead.
capacity cannot be beyond what has already been approved by the county health food department. So it cannot be an unlimited amount. Capacity doesn't increase as a result of expanded dining. So that should certainly help limit it, in addition to the fact that social distancing will still be in place. So between social distancing and the fact that a capacity cannot be more than what was originally approved, that hopefully will self-monitor that situation.
And to follow up on that, thank you, Natasha. What is not allowed in any situation, be it a street closure or a using the parking lane for a pedestrian plaza, no communal tables. So you have to have a table, and all the tables have to be at least 6 feet apart. So by not having a communal tables, that helps cut down on that. You know, I think I hear the commenter basically talking about some of the more successful areas where every one of the restaurants are doing it outdoors, and you know, having the appropriate spacing requirements and having the patrons wear masks until they sit down. It's critically important because what's going to happen is that if it's almost too successful and everybody flocks there and it becomes an event center, the county will just shut it down. So people, it's really important that the business improvement districts and the restaurants have their patrons try to adhere to the social distancing rules.
Great. We had some questions, particularly from Rick. He had one about a liquor license. If they have a liquor license, do we need to apply to serve alcohol? I think you answered that, but if you want to answer it again. And if you have street parking in front of our restaurant that is painted white, can we set up a fence to separate the street from the parking spots and add tables?
I can answer the question on alcohol. You know, again, if you have a current license already, there is a temporary catering license that will have to be filled out with ABC. And then our temporary alcohol management plan will require these to be posted on site. And so you'll see it in our information. We list out what specifically is needed from ABC and must be on site, so that if Vice does come by, that you have the appropriate documentation. So that information will be provided in that temporary alcohol management plan. And if you have a current license, again, you will need to get a temporary catering license in order to expand onto outside of your approved boundaries.
Okay, great.
I need you to repeat the question.
Oh, sorry. The question is from Rick. If we have street parking in front of our restaurant that is painted white, can we set up a fence to separate the street from the parking spots and add tables?
I don't understand the question.
So I think they have one of the white spots, like a commercial loading zone or something. Maybe they should just apply, and then, because it seems
separate, but he wants to separate the street from the what?
It says if we have street parking in front of our restaurant that is painted white.
Okay, so that's like 3-minute passenger drop off.
Right. Can we set up a fence to separate the street from the parking spot and add tables? So probably on the outside of the parking spot, can they set up a fence and then?
I apologize. I can't conceptualize that right now.
Okay.
I could ask one of my team members to put into the chat if they understand. Otherwise, we'd like to follow up with you.
Okay, perfect. We'll find Rick's contact information, have him follow
I'm
up.
good, but I'm not that good.
Jacob asks, what are we planning to do on protecting the outdoor diners from errant vehicles, a vehicle attack, or a crash?
It's a risk, essentially. We are allowing the patrons to be in the road with a temporary barrier on a long-term basis. So I know that the police chief is very concerned, but this is why we are requiring a traffic review. This is why it will be reviewed by an engineer. Normally, the city would require every business to go hire a traffic control company in order to create a traffic control plan for you for the installation of these barriers. We're telling you where you can put them and that you need to have reflective material on them so that we can help you save those costs. If you do the design appropriately, the patrons will be safe and the cars will be safe. It's very hard to protect anyone from any errant situation. That one's difficult.
All right, let's get into some of these questions here. Laurel asks, can you confirm when you have a moment if putting seating into the parking lane that you can use either bike rack or plastic K-rail filled with water?
Yes, confirmed.
Okay. Jody asks, can the streets be closed without having we've sort of talked about this. This is where Cindy's gonna have some modified regulations on having to take everything off and onto the streets. Stephen asks, can you clarify the difference between a security officer maintaining a barricade for road closure and a traffic controller actively directing vehicles on an open roadway?
Say that again. The difference between the security versus traffic control?
Correct.
So, and I think that was the question that came up, and I saw in the comments too, there was a comment that that there was a current company that Elite was currently certified to do traffic control. I just want to clarify, I believe they've been certified in the past. They are currently undergoing review. We do not have a security company right now that is certified. But they are currently undergoing review. And right now, and I think that's the Muni code that I'm going to share with you, Betsy, that you can post and send out after, because that really defines what's traffic control, because you cannot have security function as traffic control. Security can let emergency vehicles in, but they cannot let delivery trucks, trash trucks, or vehicles to go through, and that's the major difference between those. But I'll get you that specific section so that it can clarify maybe all the nuances, but that's really the main difference. I don't know, Cindy, you want to add to that, but okay, that's it.
Okay, great. Sarah asks, if we cannot do a 24/7 closure, could we leave the no park time 24/7 if we plan to do an event on 2 consecutive days?
Can you leave the no parks up if an event is in 2 consecutive days?
Right, so they may close
Yeah.
till 10
Yeah, I think
p.m.
we asked for the no parks to go up.
The no park from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. and then do it again.
Yeah, so we asked for the no parks.
72 hours.
72 hours in advance. So they would be up and available so that people know that it's coming. So yeah, it would be, but they would have to leave them up. That's part of the outreach and the communication.
Okay. A question from Reed. Are there permits available for non-restaurant type businesses such as retail or a museum?
It's for restaurants and retail. So we are allowing, the mayor's executive order allowed restaurants, and the interim urgency ordinance is for restaurants and retail. Museum does not classify as retail. I'll have to follow up on that, Reed.
Okay. And we'll get you connected if you need the information. Okay, from somebody anonymous, how can a table in a parking space be ADA compliant?
How can a table in a parking space be ADA compliant?
Correct.
It may or may not be, but the tables on the sidewalk cafe would be ADA compliant, and they would need to be reserved for ADA.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. If a restaurant shares, this is for Michelle. If a restaurant shares a parking lot with other businesses, can they utilize neighboring businesses' parking spaces with permission from the other business?
Yes.
Okay. This is from Anonymous, is permitting required for parkways between business and sidewalks when the business expansion area doesn't abut a sidewalk?
Parkways? I need to see a sketch. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe my team can answer that.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's addressed in the ordinance.
Okay. Let's see here. If the only from Corson Smith, if the only parking in front of a business is green, white, yellow zone, can they be used to put up tables and chairs?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to double check on the yellow. The green is 15-minute parking, and the white is passenger loading. I don't know if my team can follow in on the commercial loading zone. I mean, it basically impacts the business. The businesses have to understand that that's being impacted, and that commercial vehicles would have to be pulling up somewhere else. But if that's your only option, I believe it's available. Can we look at the chat and see if one of my team can answer that?
And while we're looking at that, I'll ask another question. This one's from Alonzo. You're certifying a private company to place traffic control. Could bids, MADs, or PBIDs also go through that certification process to place traffic control?
I would actually have to, that's a public safety, police department question, so I will be happy to follow up with them. If you can just shoot me that question, Betsy, and
Sure.
I'll forward that to PD and we'll get an answer out to this group.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that was well, following up. Yellow curb is allowed, red curb is prohibited, and blue curb would need to be replaced. So the answer to the previous question is yellow is yes. And the answer to the question, I wasn't sure, was that specific to street closures or to pedestrian plazas?
I think it was specific to street closures, but if there's a different answer for pedestrian plazas, and we could be certified there for PBIDs and bids and MADs. And
I just wanted to reiterate that I'm not requiring the businesses to hire a traffic control company to put out the barriers. It is recommended, but not required.
Okay, great. A question from RJ. And there's 3 or 4 other people that want to have an answer to the same question. If the bike lane is next to the curb, do the restaurant tables go on the other side of the bike lane? That doesn't seem correct. Is it a hazard for bikers and waiters?
That came up today when a restaurant put their temporary tables into the protected bike lane. And we have to request that they be removed. And then someone asked if the tables could then go next to the protected bike lane, which is something called the floating parking area. And unfortunately, the answer to that is no. Imagine being a server and carrying out all of your plates of food and walking into a bike lane and then being hit by a bike going 20 miles an hour because they blinked and they didn't see you walking into that bike lane. So that creates a conflict, and we will not be able to utilize those parking spaces.
Okay. We have a question, and I think it came up in part 1 when we had this discussion before. As far as restaurants that permit smoking in their patios and restaurants that do not, will there be a smoke-free requirement on these new outdoor dining areas?
That's a great question. I know that vaping is not allowed. I need to double check on smoking. I would say that it is not allowed because it's an eating area and not a patio. I believe that you can only I believe you can't do any smoking in a food area. So that's a county requirement. I will double check that, but I believe the answer is no smoking.
All right. We had a comment from Stormwater. I think everyone can see it, but if people have called in, Mark from Stormwater wanted to assure everyone is aware that to prevent water pollution, no discharges are allowed to reach storm drain systems. No liquids, no trash, no debris. Anything dropped or spilled needs to be cleaned up. If K-rails with water, the water needs to go to the landscaping or to sink connected to sanitary sewers, not into the streets. And he gives his contact information, and it's Mark Stevens with City Stormwater. If anyone has stormwater questions, that's very important for this program.
And it's actually a really big deal. The city has been fined before for stormwater issues, and we take it very, very seriously. So thank you. I'm glad that Mark was able to participate.
Okay, Chase had a question. Well, it may not actually be valid to his situation, but it's a good question. I'm seeing a lot of rope and plant barriers or wood plastic picket fences as barriers. Are these acceptable as protective barriers? And if not, when will it be enforced to use steel barriers or the like?
So the type of barrier we're trying to be as flexible as possible with. A heavy planter could be utilized as a barrier, but you would need multiple heavy planters. So I'm not sure the extent of the rope with that. A singular rope as the barrier is not enough of a barrier for us. That would be more of a delineator that could be used to show the different restaurants that are being delineated. So the rope barriers are not encouraged. The plastic picket fences that I saw that were installed today actually have heavy concrete bases that would be allowed by our team because they would not be mobile. So, and then also my team just confirmed no smoking in sidewalk cafes or pedestrian plazas.
Great, thank you so much. Brittany has a question. Who applies for a street closure if there are many businesses along one street frontage?
Typically, there is a host organization or needs to be a host organization because there are related issues. There needs to be a point person. There's insurance issues, et cetera. So if there is not a bid, typically there might be a local organization that would be the point of contact for the city.
Okay, and Jody had that same question, so we answered that. Brian had a question. Are there different stipulations on getting approval for outdoor seating in the street when the parking spots are metered?
Oh, repeat the question.
If there are there different stipulations on getting approval for outdoor seating in the street when the parking spots are metered parking spots?
No.
Okay. All right.
But if you want the meters removed, you would incur the cost to remove the meters. The city would not incur that cost. We will turn off the meters. We will not charge you for parking during that. But if you want the meters removed, then you as an applicant need to pay for that.
Okay. Okay, Wesley asked the question, does outdoor dining on a private parking lot also require the $1 million insurance policy and the city listed as additional insured? That's on a private parking lot.
No.
Okay. Michael King had a question, which I'm not sure we can answer or not, but I'm going to ask it. What is the alternative if we don't have parking outside of your restaurant?
Then you can have a sidewalk cafe.
Yeah. Okay. Someone else asked a question, and I think it's not necessarily for today, but it's an interesting question. We might be able to get an answer to another time. An anonymous person, will there be a waiver for customers to sign in order to dine outside for the restaurant's protection of being sued if someone was to be hit by a car?
That would be a private agreement between the restaurant and the patron.
Okay. And I think Sarah Burns' question was answered. It's one long pedestrian plaza with delineators between businesses. Who would pull that permit? Would it be a bid or another organization? I think
we will allow one restaurant to pull the permit as long as each restaurant had the EMRA and the insurance.
And so, Betsy, just so you know, the street closure is reviewing that differently than what Elyse just responded to.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. Alex asks, in a one-way 3-lane road where only one lane will be closed for curbside, can the middle lane be designated as 20-minute parking only?
Not as a part of this process.
Okay.
Potentially, but not as a part of this process. That requires a totally different permit that we would have to be evaluated. And that would not be a streamlined approval. Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If my team has a different answer, I'd like them to please respond.
And we really appreciate your openness, because we know a lot of these questions are first blush and there's analysis that needs to go through. So we appreciate you taking the time to have your staff respond. Anonymous asks, are the police going to waive their fee for towing?
That is not something that can be waived. That's a gift of public funds. So no, that will not be waived.
This will be the final question, and then I'll have you give wrap-up comments if you want. And we got to a lot of them, but keep giving us questions and we'll try to get you answers. From Sean, could a pedestrian plaza be placed next to a bike lane if it was for to-go orders only, no waiter devices? I can repeat it. Could a pedestrian plaza be placed next to a bike lane if it was for to-go orders only?
No. Someone would still be sitting in that pedestrian plaza eating your food. So whether it's to go and they bring it out or it's served to them, I don't think we could accommodate that.
All right.
If there is a drawing that you want to submit and have us evaluate, we'll take a look at it. I don't want people to get harsh on the bike lanes, because the bike lanes are important, especially if we're going to be taking out a lot of the parking. So we can look at it, but it doesn't sound promising. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, and we appreciate you looking at the sketch, and I'll make sure Sean gets that information. So with that, any closing comments? We want to respect your time, and we're coming upon the 5 o'clock hour.
We just encourage everybody to just contact us with questions. And actually, we do encourage people, as Elyse said, they'll take a look at sketches. We will take a look at your plans and your maps and et cetera, in advance of you going to the effort and the work of putting in an application. So we're happy to talk with you and have a discussion prior to all the work that goes into putting in an application for a street closure. So just give us a call and we'll work with you.
Thank you
Great.
so much, Elyse and Natasha.
I've got one closing comment.
Yes, please do. Please do.
So at this time, the program to come in and get these streamlined permits is no cost. That's because of the funding that we're going forward to council in order to fund development services, which is an enterprise funded organization. We have to get paid for the work that we do. We are not general funded. That being said, I estimate that we have enough funding to help 750 restaurants. So encouraging the businesses to go through the business improvement districts for the sidewalk cafes is important in order to preserve that funding for all restaurants. But if they need a pedestrian plaza, they can definitely come to us. But the funding will run out. And I want to be clear that when the funding runs out, we'll have to charge for our services. It will be approximately $400 for a permit. So could be a little bit more, but I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that there is no cost at this time, but there could in fact be costs later, depending on the popularity of the program.
Great, thank you for that information. So thank you to Elyse and Natasha and your teams and the entire Small Business Alliance, and also for the Downtown San Diego Partnership staff. We'll be making a recording of this webinar available tomorrow at the URL posted in the chat in our follow-up email to participants. Feel free to forward that email and its resources to other contacts you may have in the community and to other owners of businesses in the city. If you have ideas related to today's topics or for other resources that would be helpful to you and your businesses, please feel free to contact us at the Downtown San Diego Partnership or reach out to the San Diego Small Business Alliance. We are here to help everyone in the city of San Diego. Stay safe, stay strong. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.